morning and welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host and Disembodied Hands, Quindy, Disembodied Beard, John, and Twisted Oma, who has computer glasses and can see the screen. Grats! Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Yes. Oh, and I have to sing. Oh, wow. All right. Double subiversary, double subiversary, double subiversary, happy double subiversary. All right, there we go. Who, me? I am a morning person. I'm not an early morning person. It's odd. Like, I need my full sleep for sure. Have to have, like, 8 hours. Like, no, it's non-negotiable these days. But like, when it's like, 8 a.m., 9 a.m., I'm, like, pretty chipper around those times. I'm pretty chipper. Yes, exactly. You've made that comparison before, Shadow Raven. We can call you Gandalf if we want to. Grow your beard out. Get a pointy hat. You'll be Ron's favorite kind of wizard. Ever wonder why there are pointy hat wizards in Reaper's line? Ron Hawkins. It's the reason. It's the reason. Okay. So, hey, we got this giant Sophie. And oh my gosh, is she a work. She's a something. So, I kind of want to look at Rhonda's box. I think it was Rhonda, right? Or was it Michael? I don't remember who box arted her. Kara. Actually, it's Carrie. Kara Curly. Excellent. Excellent. So yeah, sometimes the box art helps you. What I'm trying to figure out is if I want to do a non-human skin tone on her. So, Resident Wizard, yeah, sounds good, Shadow Raven, sounds good. But you've got a ton of animals, right? So really, you'd be more like Radagast the Brown, right? You want the sleigh pulled by rabbits? Yeah? Tell me yes. Oh, we're doing wings, but we're not actually going to worry about wings right now. I may leave, if we want to finish her, I may have to leave the wings off. I don't know. I've got a lot of little nubbins to clean off, too. So we can talk about my ideas for skin and stuff. But first, I want to, refer to Kara's box art. So we can see that we do have the thing. Okay, so the thing about non-human skin tones. If all you've got is the face and hands, don't do non-human skin tones, in my opinion. And the reason is it's going to get you in a huge color corner, and if you can't repeat it around the model, it's not really even worth it. But we do have, we've got skin on the shoulders, skin here, skin, and skin on the knees even down here. So we can repeat the color around the model. So and of course we can also choose to use that color on the wings. It's past noon where you are. I know. I kind of liked movie Radagast. I don't know. Like, there were lots of problems with The Hobbit, but I actually enjoyed that part because I always liked Radagast when I was a kid. Uh-oh. Hold on, guys. I left my shiny X-Acto knife in the other room. One sec. I was working on my critter last night, so I needed my X-Acto knife that had a fresh blade. Critter has prancy feet now, although I still need more green stuff. His rear feet are not on, however, and won't be because I realized that he's only supported on one little thin leg, which means I probably need to run a wire right up through here. I don't necessarily need to pin it, but I do need something to support this ankle, and so that says I need to drill up and put a brass rod in there. It's just like, it's a no-brainer. When you have really thin areas like that, if you have a model that's balanced on one foot like that, and it's any sort of anything, I don't care what material it is. If it's metal, obviously, maybe you're a little bit easier these days, because metal is so tough these days. Not like the old days where the Rackham models, which were high lead, just would shatter at the ankles. But yeah, if it's any soft material that's easily drillable, just do the drill. Put the pin in the leg. Yeah, Critter's coming along. Critter's looking very prancy. I'm a fan of Critter. I did a lot of green work on Critter. My current process seems to be... I did sacrifice writing time to do work on Critter last night. Like, I had a choice. David taunted me with Overwatch. He's like, let's do our Overwatch games together. And I couldn't say no because quality time with husband. But then after that, it was like, well, I could put all this time into writing, or I could put a bunch of time into Critter and then put just a little time into writing, and I ended up doing the latter. So these little nubbins probably won't impede the wings. We can try. I have the wings back here. Come here, wings. Oh, they're just being very silly. I don't want them to knock over other things. All right. So these suckers, I see. So they slot in like this then. All right. So it slots in very... So it's kind of shallow, but it's got a lot of contact area. So I would probably use a gel super glue on this. I might pin... Gotta do a lot of cleanup on these wings if I use them. Yeah, I'm not a fan of where they join down below. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that join. The other option is to sculpt all this in. So I'll think about it. I don't know if we're going to paint this one entirely anyway. I mean, yeah. It's got a lot of contact area sagebrush, and it's resin. So, for me, for a display model, I don't consider... If I've got this much contact area, I don't consider it, like, strictly necessary to pin. It's also pinning at an angle, and so it's a pain in the butt. What I might do is glue the wings together first. And then drill the flat bit on one side, depending on how nice of a fit I can get here. But yeah, it's just fraught. But we just need to see like how much oomph I've got. I've got oomph for the baby otter. I've got some oomph for Sophie. We'll see how it goes. But let's just go around and kind of like see what kind of little nubbins we've got to remove. Little nubbins. And I can mention my thoughts. So, originally what I thought about doing is painting her like a night elf from World of Warcraft. So, night elf druid. Because I like their purpley pink skin tones that they can have. You can also just do a normal skin tone night elf, of course. And it would be colored hair in that case. Which, considering you're working with a lot of, like, leather and leaves, can work. It would be using a lot of neutrals for the wood, for wraps, stuff like that. I don't like using like two-part like epoxy necessarily, but if you green stuffed these in, I think they'd be pretty. Like super glue them and then green stuff all the gaps, and I think you'd be pretty solid with resin. Survive several trips to the floor, yes. Yeah, for me, all my models are going to be display. So all I have to worry about ever is, can I get it to Reapercon intact, and will it survive being in Ron's office? But in general, the thing is that since I don't have a very hazard-filled environment like Koroniko does with her kitties, I don't really need a super heavy duty solution. I find that the super heavy duty solutions are more of a pain than I want to deal with. And a model like this is not a gaming piece. Unless you're using her as a giant. You could use her as a cloud giant. Like, or a storm giant ranger. Or druid. That would be a pretty good use for her, actually. She's the right size. If you wanted to use her in a game. But anyway, if you're usually not going to use a model like this in a game, I don't consider the heavy-duty adhesives to be necessary. I personally find that if there's enough contact area, super glue with the green stuff filling the gaps is a good... I mean, it's epoxy, right? Green stuff is epoxy. But, like, I find that that together is enough. Well, it all survives. It just, like, slowly fades out of existence until it's lost Shadow Raven. That's the problem with Ron's office. So you don't need to be highly durable. You just need to be highly visible. Alright. I'll leave those. They're not too bad. If I'm green stuffing anyway. They're just little tiny imperfections. All these little tiny nubbins. Nubbins. So many nubbins. And I prefer to use a knife to take these off. But you can use whatever you want to use. With resin, sometimes the little nail grinder tools will work pretty well. You just need to wear a dust mask. The front is really clean. Like, I don't really see any little pips or lines. Mostly it's the back. So these were cleaned really well. And even the back, it's mostly around the connection area where you really are going to be covering stuff up anyway. So I think the cleaning job overall is very good. It's just a couple of little things, like this little bit here. Yeah, I would exile the hubby for that. Tell him he's hope you've given him a piece of your mind about it. Super glue, especially used like in vast quantities, like really he needed to do that in your garage. Although if it's still really fumigating, I'd be worried, like what are those skeletons made of? Because some plastics can react to certain super glues. Most don't. And shouldn't, but you shouldn't be spelling it 2 days later. Like, it sounds like there's some sort of chemical reaction going on there. Yeah, plastic glue is pretty intense stuff. I like the GW plastic glue as far as like how well it works for the styrene, but I always have problems with the applicators clogging. And so this time I got the Tamaya bottle with the tiny brush, which is annoying because I have to have the bottle open when I'm using it. But what I've just started doing is like making one surface completely ready, opening the bottle, applying the glue, closing the bottle, and then sticking the parts together, and just doing it so that I only need to open the bottle for small periods at a time. I'm just going to go around and make sure I get all the parts off of this. I think we're almost there. But yeah, that's what Critter's getting put together with, is the Tamiya. Plastic cement. And it is a little reeky, but it's actually not as bad as I thought it would be. I just hold my breath when I've got the bottle open, and then I close it really as fast as I can. Because I hate inhaling that stuff. Yeah, but usually they don't off-gas after they do that, Shadow Raven. Right? That's what you want, actually. I mean, that's why I assume they think I can get away with Critter here being balanced on a single paw while he's leaping. Right? Which is a great pose, and I love it. But they just are like, yeah, the plastic's going to melt together, it's going to be stable. But that one little thin paw is not enough for me. Even melted together, because it's still thin. It's not going to snap at the joint where the glue was on. It's going to snap right at the ankle above it. Like, that's the thing, right? But what Twisted Oma is describing sounds more like off-gassing. Which can also be primer. Did he prime them all? And are they, like, PVC models? Twisted Oma? Like, I have seen Bones, Reaper Bones, the traditional stuff, off gas when a certain primer, it was an automotive primer, I think. Like, the primer would not cure, and it had severe stink. It was bad. Hey, Big Chimpo, this is the Big Sophie from Reapercon last year. Was in the meet and greet. If you went to the meet and greet, you had the option to get it. I thought I would at least do a little bit of painting on her. How long I stay on her just depends on how well it goes and how much interest I have in it as it goes on. So no promises, because this kind of project can take a lot of hours. And that's even if we don't even put the wings on. Not even talking about wings. Now, some details are going to be very large because this has been blown up from a small model. Like these feathers are way, way big. All right, I think we're going to run with this. I think we've got it. Looks like everybody's happy. Maybe I'll give her a stripy head sparrow, like the ones out of my patio. Or a goldfinch. Although this is a bit big for a goldfinch. It would have to be a very piggy goldfinch that ate all the seeds. Although they've gotten pretty piggy these days. They're starting to eat out of the regular bird feeder because they're just like, it's much faster to just guzzle the seeds in the regular bird feeder instead of picking them out of the thistle feeder. Alrighty. Yeah, I think we're good. I do need to prime this, don't I? Crap. As Anne suddenly realizes that this model of all models probably needs to be primed. And she obviously didn't do it this morning. Maybe we have to take a brief trample out to get some primer on this model. There. Right, yeah. It's got to be, if you're still smelling it 2 days or more, like more than the same day, if you're still smelling it, it's chemical off-gassing. It may not stop. He may be screwed. He may need to cut those models off the bases and trash all that stuff. I don't know what those minis are made of, if he has them on bases or not. But see, if you're still smelling it 3 days later, Twistoma, I don't think it's going to stop. Alright guys, I am going to run out very, very quickly. I have my primer in the other room. I'm going to do a quick spray on this model, because I totally should have remembered that I do need to spray it, because it's resin. And then I will be right back, and we will begin. And I will actually give it time to cure while I describe the paint job that I'm thinking of doing. 1 second. Hey, Pop. We got Daddy Sniffer, huh? Daddy Sniffer. Big girl. I need a white timer, Pop. completely destroyed my last of my can of primer. Yeah, so probably it's the bones, the regular bones, although it could also be the bones black. And whatever glue he used was inadvisable to be used on that material. I don't even know how to fix that. Like, because if they're on bases, then I would cut that base and magnet right off. But that shouldn't have been a problem. See, if he put them on black plastic bases, that shouldn't react to any super glue I know of. But if he glued them straight to bones, there may be a particular type of glue that, if he glued them straight onto the bones. And then he's kind of screwed. Like, I don't think it's going to stop. The guy I knew who managed to make his bones off gas, like, weeks later they still stunk. And it's not healthy to breathe, you know. I think he ended up having to toss that miniature. So I got a thin coat of primer on her. I guess I could do some brush on. Thin coat should be all I need, though. She got kind of speckly, though, so I just did not have much primer left in my can, and I didn't want to keep you guys waiting longer, so. Hypothetically, only a small amount of primer should be needed. Yeah, that's what I was pretty much saying, Laura, is like, you'd have to cut off the base off the model. But that's going to be like, I mean... Yeah, the question is, Twisted Oma, the question we're asking is, did he put the Bones Minis on bases first and glue the magnets into the bottom of the base? Or did he just glue the magnet onto the Bones Mini? But yeah, you'd have to get rid of it. That's what my point is. Either you trash the whole mini, which is, you know, and the magnet. Like, that's the problem. Like, it's just... It's not good. And putting magnets in landfills isn't good either. Like, it's just not a good... It's very, very not good. Yeah. Yeah, there's just some bad crap, bad chemical stuff that can happen. That is the problem, though. It's like, it's not going to stop. And that means it needs to be, whatever part of it is off-gassing needs to be separated and destroyed. Yeah. I'm thinning down my primer, actually a lot more than I normally would, and I'm just going to try to put a thin layer over the Soph. Just getting a little bit more primer on here since I don't want to go off stream and I don't want to really open my new can of primer and wait to shake that sucker up for forever. So I'm just using my base, my mixing brush to block in some primer bits. It's not going to be a super smooth coat of primer, but it at least will give us a little bit of something to work with. But I already did get an okay, like a speckle of spray primer down, so this will just augment it essentially. Gonna make sure I get the hands, the shoulder, get all the skin tones. I usually use the Reaper primer a bit thicker, but I thinned this one down because I already have a little bit of primer on the model. I just want a thin coat. I just don't want to waste time doing it, Shadow Raven. I'd more like to sit and just, quickly brush prime parts of the mini and talk to you guys than to leave the room. Because my own, I have to prime this model. Because I haven't had to prime a model for so long that I've done on stream that isn't metal. Oh, and there's more skin here. So there's quite a bit of skin. Oh, yeah, that's a huge... He's done. He's kind of screwed himself, Twisted Oma. He needs to throw those out. It's not going to stop off-gassing. Yep. He should ask. Different stuff reacts with PVC. And whenever you're dealing with bones, you should ask. Go to the Discord or whatever. If you don't know how to get on it, get your kids to help you. And ask if the adhesive that you're thinking of using, it will work okay on bones, and see if anybody knows. Most people, if you would have said 5-minute epoxy and bones together, would have said, don't do it. And unfortunately, that decision may cost him all those models. Yeah, 5 minutes says not to use on PVC. So just, yeah, but, who reads the labels? I won't blame him for not seeing the fine print on the label. But PVC is not like normal plastic. And even then, I don't think I'd use 5-minute epoxy on a... There are certain plastics that would be okay on, I'm sure. Green stuff is not the same thing. Green stuff is 2-part epoxy, yeah, but because it's not a liquid, it's a different beast chemically than the glue, than the liquid stuff. Yeah, any PVC. It's not just bones, right? There are other companies using PVC. I'm using this primer to figure out where I did not do as good of a job here. Well, Laura, if you do a search online for PVC and 5-minute epoxy, maybe you'll find out why those two react, and then you can use it to figure out why the green stuff does not react. But yeah, not all epoxy is created equal, as Shadow Raven says. Sorry, I got a little bit of a crumbly there. All right, hand. It's toxic, Twisted Oma. That's exactly why you need to talk to him and tell him, one, they need to be put, in the garage or somewhere away from you. And 2, he may need to just throw them out. That those fumes are not going to stop. And anywhere he takes them, that smell's going with him, and those fumes are going with him. I don't want to be in an enclosed car with those models riding in it. It's just not good stuff. And I understand it was an honest mistake, but yeah, tell him Bones PVC models have reactions to various chemicals, and so before you do that sort of thing, you should always check. Make sure that the product you're using is not going to create that kind of reaction. Right, because it's being used where near water sources and stuff, right? So green stuff is mostly non-reactive. It's not non-toxic. It's non-reactive. I'm just finishing priming over the not very good prime that I got from my spray primer, which was on the end of its little life. I don't want to muck around with it more. And doing this will actually make those areas that I need to paint skin stand out. Alright, and then ears. I always forget ears. Hey, Roger. Yeah, so he didn't use super glue, and then he has a problem. Yeah. But, alright, and then the other ear is hidden. Dang it. I hate it when that happens. I hate it when your ears get hidden behind feathers. Alright. But yeah, he probably feels bad that he did that, but... But yeah, I mean, he can wait and see if the off-gassing stops, but chances are it's going to take a long time. Alright. Okay, so the color that I wanted to use was like purple skin, blue hair. One second. Ugh, my phone. Sometimes when I zoom, it's just like dumb. As I try to make my phone be happy. So kind of like her. So lavender skin, darker kind of muted blue hair. No, it's just going to reactivate, probably, Crowley. What happens is, plus the accelerants and the spray primers react with bones. That's unfortunately, in my experience, there's really no coming back from that mistake. And that happens sometimes. I mean, the plus side is skeletons are cheap, especially bone skeletons. It's not going to seal it, Crowley. You're having a chemical reaction. It's not as easy as, like, it's... It just, I don't think so. You could try, but it might throw good time after bad. I don't think there's a way to save it. Yeah, so see, there we go. So, yeah, just a little memo. Yeah, so just a little there. Still, yeah, it's done. Like, that mistake, there are very few mistakes in this hobby that you can't come back from, but that is one of them. Let me look at that skin tone. I'm going to take a screenshot of it of that Night Elf. I'm going to put it in my photos. So I'm going to look for a purple that's close. Ooh, Wild Violet looks like it's dead on. Like, Wild Violet looks like it's really, really close to the shadow. It's definitely the shadow color. Okay, so once we've got the shadow color, then we have to look at how this is coming up. There are some magenta tones, and there are some cooler blue tones with the highlights. So... yeah, thanks, Just a Little Mimod. I was pretty sure that was the case. It's good to hear, you popping in. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just get rid of it. Yep, exactly. And hopefully he has learned from this and will check out adhesives before he uses them with bones, or chemicals in general with bones. Yeah. Alright, so now I need to look at that and see... maybe mixing some Icy Violet into the Wild Violet will give me that. I don't know, though. That's a little bit too blue. I'm going to do some mixes, because since this is digitally painted, you can get a lot of different things going on that have nothing to do with pigment. So when you're doing this... oh, that reminds me. I had a treat for you guys. So, David has, at Google, they have a message board, or a thingy, for a discussion, a chat board, for Warhammer, for miniature painters and gamers. And there was a guy on there who created, in Python, a program for testing color mixes. So, like, he essentially created a bunch of standard swatches from the Chimera colors plus white, because he had to use a spectrophotometer on it. Spectrophotometers on it. God, I always hate saying that word. Essentially a computer that can analyze a color, right, and reduce it to RPG. And then he was able to get a value for the swatch for the RBG, and he was then able to program that information into Python to essentially produce a color, essentially a power palette. Well, not really like super accurate power palette, but his discussion, like, he works in the video game industry and does lighting and color for games. So he actually has a huge background on this sort of thing, and this is exactly the sort of thing that he would nerd out on. But what's interesting is his discussions of, how light works, how color works. Well, I mean, you can't use it. That's the problem. He made it privately. It's like he put it under open source, but it's not like there's an app, right? But I wanted to read part of his about this for you, just to show you. 1 second. me grab my computer. So lest you all think this is the Holy Grail, it's not. I hate to disappoint you. And he actually brings up some of the weaknesses in his documentation. Other weaknesses he did not document, but I will tell you because I've used a spectrophotometer before. We used one when we did the first Reaper colors, the first MSPs, the first 54 colors. Al, who was my trainer at the time, Reaper owner, had always used one to figure out the formulas for swatches, right? You swatch a color, run it through the spectro thing, it would spit out a formula, you would mix that formula. So the problem with it, seriously, is that computers, they don't really understand pigment, right? So essentially when you give a computer a muted color, what I found is that its recommendation always veered toward black as a muting agent. And pigmentally, this is a bad idea. Black is the one color you can use to mute that kills the saturation of your color. It kills the life right out of it. And once it's there, it's almost impossible to pull out. Like, you can only go back from black if you're using a couple of key pigments. And then you'd have to load more of those pigments in to essentially minimize the black, which would change your entire color. So that was the biggest problem. It's why I didn't like a lot of those early core colors. I felt like I didn't really get the color I wanted because we started with the spectrometer, the spectrophotometer. And because of that, I was able to adjust some of those formulas over time, but I didn't really get to do a complete rework. I ended up just doing the complete rework when I did bones, where we were far past, like, essentially if you've got somebody like me, you don't need the spectrophotometer. You don't need it. I am one. And I'm a lot more accurate. So I was laughing when David was sharing this with me. But, okay. So if you ever wondered why mixing paint is hard, let me read you his opening paragraph. This is after he talks about the physics of light, by the way. The only missing bit to get the paint mixing software is the model for actually mixing the paints. You might think that maybe if we take 50% of paint A and 50% of paint B, the resulting mix will have the 50-50 mix of reflected color of paint A and B. Or technically, that paint mixing is linear. Well, bad news, of course, it isn't linear. It's actually highly nonlinear, and to get something meaningful, we need to dive into radiative transport theory and differential equations. Paint mixing is hard, folks. But no worries, we'll only skim the surface, he says, and then goes on for another 6 pages of text, equations, and graphs. This README files is entertaining as hell. It's wonderful. But he's right, Crows. This is the thing. He knows his business. He works with this stuff on a daily basis. Yeah. So essentially what he found very quickly, and by the way, he just started painting miniatures. Like, he got into painting miniatures relatively recently. I'd say he sounds like he's gotten in within the last year or two. And this led him to try to do this experiment, this programming experiment, because he's also a programmer. So, but he's right, and it's obvious, right? If you mix 50% red and yellow pigment, you don't get a medium orange, do you? You get a red that's a little bit warm. So pigments function in a nonlinear fashion, and in fact, he specifically mentioned that his program really fell down on yellows, because yellows are so transparent and the program couldn't handle transparency. And this is the problem with using a spectrophotometer in trying to reproduce suggested formulas for paints, is that it can't handle transparency. You must have an opaque color. And not all pigments are opaque. Most of them aren't. You can add white, but some pigments are so weak that if you add enough white to make a totally opaque color, you've washed out your pigment. You've washed out the color, so you're not going to get the result you want. But yeah, so y'all just kind of know, if you ever wondered why you have trouble paint mixing paint, is because you're not into radiative transport theory and differential equations. I just love this. I love this whole thing. I want to save this README file because it's beautiful. It's a huge, in-depth geek out on the physics of color and how color interacts, and it's brilliant actually, but it's full of formulas and it's full of math. And he talks about reflections. And actually, the one other thing that I wanted to bring up, which is really interesting, and it goes with mini painting actually quite a bit. Let's see if I can find it. Okay. So he mentions that an important bit, he's talking about reflected light and how it changes color. Yes, he goes into all this. So he's like, one very important bit, in the case of non-metallic materials, light reflected does not change its color. The reflected light will have the same, essentially, color as the one falling on the object. Interestingly, this behavior is very similar for most non-metals, to the extent that in computer graphics, we often just treat all non-metal surfaces the same way. They can be rough or smooth, but they reflect the same amount of light, no matter if it's plastic, skin, or concrete. This, folks, is why we highlight things roughly the same way unless we're dealing with shiny surfaces. Think about that. But that's the way it works in physics. And so that's the way they do it in computer programming. Skin, cloth, or concrete, it's all reflecting light the same way, same amount of light. There are small variations, but in his opinion, not enough to warrant significant differences. So, well, right, but that's all you need. You're doing a miniature, you're not doing particle physics, right, Big Chimpo? So I found that very interesting because that is absolutely the way that we highlight miniatures. We only, like, when I tell you to only go up to pure white on shiny things, that's why. So when we highlight other surfaces, we tend to highlight it all like the same, right? Unless you're doing like a specific sort of cloth that's very, very dull. Then you might not highlight it quite as much. But if you don't highlight it as much, what you're going to notice is that it looks wrong. And so then you have to adjust it. But this is why, so if you look at computer games and you look at all the surfaces that aren't metal, same level of highlighting on everything under the same lighting. So that was the other, like, cool tidbit that I pulled away from that. You're kind of, the only way to do Dark Elves seriously, like, to really bring the face out is to pop your highlights on the face. Much as we just said that skin should all be highlighted the same, if you've got light on the rest of the figure, you can still bring up highlights on the skin, and you should. You can always glaze with your darkest skin tone, your shadow skin tone afterward if you think it goes up too high. But it's worth remembering that even dark skin people have really high highlights on skin. 1 second. Let me see if I can find an example. These are cool. Let's see if I can find something cool. So, if you go and look at black and white, there's a lot of light there. That's a dark skin tone. And so if we make that the size of a miniature, 1 second while I try to find one that's the size of a miniature. So if we look at something that's the size of a miniature, sure, your shadows are dark, your mids are relatively dark, but you have a lot of light. And so you don't want to make something so dark that it's going to lose, even this one, which is a pencil drawing, I think, and the feather disrupts it, but you can still see the highlights, right? That one's not as effective. I'm looking for a good, really dark skin. That's a good one. This one. But you've got, the skin here is very dark. Overall, the mid skin tone is extremely, this is a beautiful picture, by the way. It's very dark, right? And you've got some very cool shadows on the underside of the face. Oop, and then I angered my freaking thing again. 1 second. Let me unanger my thing. My phone. When I try to zoom in on something and then I want to go to it, it's really dumb. All right. So, you really do want to emulate this sort of thing on your dark elves. Or anytime you're doing a dark skin tone. Because it's the only way to make that face come out. You've got to remember you're going to have some highlights. And the light is it's gonna come up. This is, I think, a little overforced. The skin only gets this hot of a highlight, usually when it's got a very strong spot on it. But, and you can almost see that with the rounded thing that they're using. But you could dim that down just a little bit and still use the contrast between how dark the shadows are and how light. Like, this is more like... But this is what you want to do in miniatures because you're overemphasizing, right? Otherwise, you're going to lose all that face. Nobody's going to look at it. This is the problem with doing a dark skin tone. But that's why you got to do something like this. It's just, this is a really lovely piece. You can see the different tones. It's coming out very red now that I've zoomed in, but it's not really very red. But yeah, you can see the artist using the rosy tones, but also the cool kind of purpley tones down here. But yeah, so highlighting that under the eye, bridge of the nose, top of the mouth, forehead, and a little bit on the chin. But that, even if you took down this, if you dropped this, yeah, the white hair is like, I mean, you're going to just be doing the white hair, right? The hair's going to be white. It's going to help to frame the face. But you still need to highlight the face. Like, the white hair on dark elves saves you, kind of, because it does attract the eye up and it does frame the dark skin of the face. But you still need to highlight the face for the face to come out. And then the face won't look too dark. Don't overdo your highlights or you go too high. But then, like I said, then just grab kind of your mid-dark color and just glaze everything. This is a painting, so... They probably took a picture of somebody sitting under studio lighting, and then they did the painting. But it's still amazing. It's still beautiful. And it's the intensity of this is the thing, Twistoma, but just fade this out, and just fade this out to this outer halo. Like, instead of going and doing this white spot, just use enough of a highlight to be, like, doing this, and take this down a little bit, so that it's more just like this highlight. And you're still, like here, you can see this eye, right? This is a soft highlight. It's more natural. You can still see the eye really well, especially with the shadows around it. So just remember these things. Look up dark skin tones. I searched specifically African American portrait. And so I got a lot of both photographs and painted examples. But, like, even with these guys... the highlights are being used to bring out the facial features, and that's key. Like, that's true of any face, any skin tone. Even this more subtle one here, and notice how when you get really subtle with it, you really don't see it anymore, right? So if you go very subtle, then you're not going to get as much. There, okay. Back to what we were doing. I was going to do some paint mixing to try to figure out this skin color. Mostly, I'm going to start out by mixing Wild Violet with white and see what color I get, and then see how I need to adjust it. Yeah, we're heavy on the knowledge today, between talking about spectrophotometers and light physics and paint mixing and... yeah, Dragon Day, how's it going? But yeah, ignore the fact that they've got the spotlight directly on her head in that picture, and just, like, dim that light down, but still keep a highlight there. Because the placement is what's important in what I showed you, not the intensity. But the fact that you need those highlights on the face, even a dark face, you've got to highlight. Because even though skin isn't as shiny as metal, it's... One second, let me just get this set up. It still has a sheen to it, right? So So that's why with skin, sometimes I will highlight a little bit more than I do on other surfaces. And again, that's also a function of the scale, right? The fact that we are intensifying our shadows and highlights to make details stand out at 28 millimeter. This model is big enough to cast its own shadows. I don't need to do any extra work. And in fact, I need to watch and make sure that I don't overemphasize shadows on this. Yeah, it's not the same as like metallics, but I don't know if you were here for the thing I was reading earlier about light physics and surfaces. Dragon. If you just came in, you missed it. Maybe I'll put part of that in a PDF and credit that guy, because it's all open. It's all open source. It's just not available to most of you guys because you don't have access to where he posted it. Most of it, honestly, is hardcore math and physics, and I wouldn't want to wish it on you guys. But all right, so I'm mixing in white, and I'm trying to see how close I am. So instead, okay, notice what I'm doing here as far as the color mixing and matching stuff. Okay, hold on, let me get this. So we're trying to engineer this skin color. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm just adding white to, I discerned that Wild Violet is very much the skin tone in the shadows here. But I wanted to see if I could just add white to that in order to get the highlight. It actually looks like I can. This actually looks really close to the light color on her skin. So they may have honestly just done very, very simple stuff. I thought maybe they were getting complex, and I can see places where they put blues in the shadows. But in general, it looks like they may have just gone with a very simple add white. So let's do a face with this and see how it looks. And I'll probably bring in a little bit of blue for shading. So we're going to pop that in there, and then we're going to make a really light color. So yeah, when in doubt, if you've identified the shadow color on a non-human skin tone, add white and see where it takes you. And if you're off, then you can just add a little bit of something you like if I would have looked at that and gone, oh yeah, there's more blue in that. It would have been very easy to see at that point, because I had added white, and white just kind of has a way of showing you what pigments are in a particular color. Oh, hold on. I missed that question. Oh yeah, if you're using a non-human skin tone, it absolutely counts as a color. That's why they're so problematic. Because it takes up one of your color slots. And the secondary problem you're getting into seriously, which is what I'm writing my PDF on right now, is muted colors. That Drow skin tone, if you're using the Dark Elf skin tone from Reaper, it's extremely gray, which really limits the other colors you can put on the figure. Alright, there we go. Alright, let's see what we can do with this. Reaper, where's my Reaper 0? It's my base coat usually these days. So I'll start dark and work light on here. Like, it's not a neutral because you have used a color. So if you used, like, instead if you use dark skin, that's a brown. That is a dark brown that's mostly neutral. But when you're using a gray that you can definitely still see the purple in, it's a color. But it's a muted color, so it's intensely problematic. It's, it means that you need to use other grayed out colors around it. Or if you're going to use a bright color like a bright red with your drow, you want to make that color very small and turn it into an accent color. Yes, yes, our silly early daylight savings time. I'm happy because I got to take my walk last night and it was still light out, which I love. No more wearing my stupid light up belt and walking in the dark. And tonight is CrossFit, so if we're out running, we'll be running actually in the daylight. But yeah, so muted colors can be problematic because if you use them with anything that's too saturated, too bright, they clash unless you keep that bright color down. Which is why when you see dark elves with purple skin, you usually also see them dressed in neutral colors. Getting my purples plotted in so I can see if this is a... But even now, like you can see, this is a color. This is absolutely a color. Even if this was a gray purple, it would absolutely be a color on the model. I am taking up a color slot by making this choice, and I'm dooming this model to wearing a lot of neutrals. But yes, so by putting this now, as I highlight this color, it will come up much paler and it'll be much less strong. It'll essentially mute out as I add highlights, but part of it will still be this more intense purple. And so by choosing this color, I have chosen not just to take up one of my color slots on the model for strong colors, but also I've kind of chosen what kind of like strong versus muted scheme I'm going to allow. Because this is a slightly muted color, and so putting a really bright green on the leaves is not going to work. Not nearly as well as more muted green. It can be fairly bright, it just can't be incredible. And that's what I'm talking about in this PDF for the Patreon that you guys will get hopefully later today or tomorrow, depending on how quickly I can manage to find paints and make swatches. But it's on a scale, right? It's not like a color is muted or saturated. They're on a scale from highly saturated to highly muted. So essentially I've given like 3 categories, a 3-step scale in this PDF. And I'll give example colors. I can't give all the example colors, but I can give you a baseline. Then you have to like look at colors and use your own gut to judge. I'm just going to paint this whole thing even though the bird's legs are in there. I'm well on my way to adjusting. I think that by tomorrow I'll be back to normal. Daylight savings time is throwing me for less of a loop than reintroducing gluten into my diet. How about that? I think I'm back on the rational eating this week. It's just hard because putting more carbs into my diet always throws me into cravings hell. Just trying to get... Hi, Papa. Hi. Do I have a Papa? Does the Papa want to come up and say hi? Does the Papa? Oh, I moved and then you decided you didn't want to. Well, where's my papa? I can't pet her unless she comes over here. Papa! Yay! There you are. You are a silly dog. You know that? You're so silly. Hold on. I'm seeing if she's going to come up and say hello. Yeah, I like the longer hours at night. Yeah. Hi there, Kiki. Hi, Kiki. Hi, Kiki. So, Kiki has stopped grabbing my slipper and jumping out of the bed in the morning. She's decided to cut out the middleman, or the middle slipper in this case, and just jump on me when she gets let out of her pen in the morning. This morning, she jumped onto the bed, like, licked my face, and then fell over on me. Oh, hi, Bubs. You're going to say hi to the stream. Good girl. Good girl. Good girl. More pettins. More pettins. Yeah, tell them that you laid on me. Yeah, you fell over on me. It was very heavy. You're a very heavy dog. You are. Good girl. Good girl. There you go, Bubba. Yeah, you're a good girl. Yeah. Yeah. Hi, fuzzy butt. All right, Bubba, I gotta go back and work. KK? Yeah, Cerberus appears. All right, let's block in the rest of this skin. I gotta get the shoulders. I totally forgot the shoulders. Purple, so purple. Well, we seldom do non-human skin tones because they're problematic, so we're gonna try it on this. And we'll end up using a lot of different neutrals. Because right away I know that if I'm going to match that art, then I need to do blue and purple, and that means I'm also doing green for the leaves, right? So I already have 3 strong colors on this model. Already chosen. Now I just need the specifics. But I can repeat those colors. So the green is obviously going to be repeated around the model. The blue is just going to be on the hair, so I can repeat that blue around the model for other things, and I will. There we go. And we'll get this other leg in, and then we will have all of our purple. So much purple. Yesterday I went outside and finished aerating the terrible part of our lawn. And spread all my grass and clover seed. I did a mix of ryegrass, mini clover, and Dutch white clover. With most of it being ryegrass, but with about 1/3 being the combined parts of clover. So we'll see. I will be happy if some of our grass regrows. I'm hoping the aeration will do the trick. The soil was certainly compacted. We have huge bare spots on our grass. And we don't have very much grass, so. Right, Kiki? Because of you. Oh, God, Cornico. Yeah, no guarantees as to whether I'm going to finish it. It's huge. Yeah. We have had the rain, but I think today we're having just a little sprinkle around the area, but I think that might be the last of it. Hey, Kiki, what are you doing? All right, so I want to try a highlight, but first I always line. I'm going to use brown liner for sure on this because I don't want to, and I'll get closer too. I don't want to be really harsh with it. Big models, you usually want to do more of a naturalistic lighting because they're big enough to cast their own shadows. So if you go really harsh with the contrast, it's not going to work as well as it does with the little stuff. It's just big. Big is not necessarily difficult. Sometimes I find big is easier. Yeah, so we started taking Kiki out on the other side of the house so that she doesn't walk over the really worn down, pretty much just mud parts of our yard on her way out to do her business. And hopefully the yard comes back. And hopefully the clover helps it too. Alrighty. Brush. But yeah, that was my yard work yesterday. Now I'm done with it for a bit. I just need to remember to water every day. Although it's still really high humidity out there, because my paint is even it's resisting drying. So just like I would on a smaller MIDI, I'm going to darken the eyes. These eyes are big. So we will definitely be able to do colored irises on these. I may even use this for a video on colored irises. Alright, let's get a little closer. Boop. She looks pretty evil at this point. Oh, nice. Wildflower seeding, sweet. So I'm going to be pretty heavy on the underside of this ring thing on her forehead. I just like to, as usual, I do this to get an idea of put a dark shadow essentially, especially with white primer. I want to get this dark shadow in so that I have a reference point for darks on the model, because right now everything is either white primer or this purple. But in painting in and lining around, I get a reference point for the darks, and I get a better idea of how light or dark the skin really is as I work on it. Darken the mouth, which will have teeth in it eventually, but not right now. Oh, overdid it. Yeah, she looks pretty evil right now. Is she secretly evil? Did I miss something? It's the purple face. Disney villain face. Yep. Yeah, she looks like she's going to be pretty evil. I don't know. Maybe this is the evil version. We just haven't realized it yet. Yes, but I don't know if I'm going to put the wings on this. Maybe this is Sophie's evil sister who isn't a succubus. I reserve the right to do an evil version. So again, just taking in and bringing the shadow around next to the skin. I'm just painting over parts of the hair and stuff. Oh, I blorfed on the cheek. That's easy. Just pull that off. Gotta move quick when you do that. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be painting over this hair with a medium dark blue, so we're going to be all right. So just get that line in there. It's going to crisp everything up. There we go. Got that. I might actually stop the lining here just to get first highlight on the face, to take a look at it. I'll get the shoulder done. However, the fact that this is, so you can see how getting that dark line around there makes a big difference in how tight the model looks, even without anything else done to it. Gonna get more of my straight up wild violet and make sure that I get the darker areas solidly painted in that. My base coat was a little thin, so I didn't get a lot of solid color down there. Boop-a-doop. All right. So with this wild violet, you probably want 2 coats if they're thinned. Border Collie's reseeding nature. That's good. It's a good use for Border Collie energy. Alright, let's try to get some highlight on this. Might need to go a little bit lighter than this. We'll see. Pack Otter is cute. Although the one on the website is the small one, I believe, Olivia. This is the big one that was produced in very limited quantities for Reapercon last year. However, it's the same sculpt, and you absolutely can paint it the same way I'm painting it. So I'm going to bring in my first layer of highlight, which is pretty subtle. Upper lip. Just where I was showing you on those portrait paintings that we showed that we looked at, you're going to get a line down the nose. You're going to get highlights underneath the eyes. Highlights on top of the upper lip, although I usually veer around the nose a little bit because the nose is going to cast a shadow. Highlight on the top of the chin. This highlight color is really close to the base color, so I'm not getting a lot of contrast, which if we want to blend is probably a good thing. And I was thinking about introducing some blues. I was going to try to figure out what the blue is for the hair, though. Let's see. Nope, that's too green. So Sharkbite is too green. Hobgoblin's too muted. Where is my... I think it actually... Oh, wrong one. I might not. Actually, of all the blues that I have, I might not have the right blue. I feel like carbon scoring is close for the highlights, but I think I need a slightly more... Void is going to be too transparent. Where's my Ritterlick? I think I grabbed Riddle to go out and be part of my... Yeah, I'm gonna have to grab my Riddle blue. It's like Prussian blue, the hair. Maybe I'll grab a scale color. It's a little bit off of all of my greenish blue darks. I haven't looked at Storm Chaser, but sure, Storm Chaser I think is going to be too muted. Yeah. I think I'm going to use some Void for the shadows though. I'm not a Void is a good blue for like translucent shading, but it's not got much coverage, so yeah, I wish that my little back of my house area got more sun. It only gets sun late in the day. Makes it hard to put something back there. Alright, I'm going to mix up some blue, some Void blue. Here's my Void blue. And I'm going to put a little bit of this Wild Violet in it. And a little bit more because it's too blue. It needs to be more indigo. Now it's shifting. I'll leave it dark, but I think I thinned it down. Just use little bits of it. Bring in some cool shadows in places like under the cheekbone. A little bit of blue right there. I'm going to use that color here. A little bit there. Just messing around with deepening some of the shadows. Gotta be real careful, because if I go too deep with them, they're really gonna be overdone. Sides of the nose are also another good place to shade. If I get a little bit too much, I can pull it back by painting the base coat over it. And then under the jaw. Now let's get this highlight in here. I still have way too much dark here. I need to really bring this up. And I know it's 10 after 11. The problem with starting dark on skin tones is that you've got to cover up a lot of the surface. This is always the problem with starting dark to light, is it's a lot of extra work because you're starting dark and then you have to go over the surface again and again with higher and higher highlights, which is why it can be easier to start in the mid, shade down, and highlight up. You go over the same ground a lot less. Yeah, I think she's kind of evil. She's got an evil look to her. That's the brows. Trying to bring up this side of the face. Since we have a much bigger face, we're also going to be putting in a little bit of magenta and rosy color, just like in that painting we looked at, the color inspiration for this. I also want to just kind of bring in the thing about this lower lid is you can emphasize it or not. If you emphasize it, she'll look a little older. So we're just trying to bring out the areas of the face with the shading here and the little bit of the highlighting that we had time for. And we have a long way to go to bring up the highlight to the point where we really need it. Because painting light color over dark, it's going to take a while to bring those colors up. A couple of different layers at least. And we'll have to come back and work on it next time. And we'll definitely want to add some rosy tones to her lips as well. Although I'll probably refer to my concept art for that. Yeah, I didn't have trouble I had trouble growing anything in Texas when I lived there. If it wasn't the heat, it was the insects just devouring them, like grubs and stuff. The butterflies never got a chance. Makes me happy out here because it's a lot easier. But now we also have other pests that like to eat things out here, so. Part of her evil look is definitely that her eyes are black right now, so. Right, exactly. It might not be birds. That's what I was thinking, Richard. There are plenty of bugs in Texas and critters that are not birds, depending on where you live. So as we bring up that light there, we want to bring up that skin a lot. The upside of working dark to light is that you don't lose your darks. If you try to shade down, if you try to start with the mid and shade down, often your darks won't be dark enough because you'll be putting them over a light undercoat, and so they won't actually, they'll look fine at first, but they won't actually give you the contrast you maybe want. So that's why I tend to, even with the pain in the butt that it is, I tend to still go dark to light on skin tones. painstaking as it is to bring them up. Yeah, happily we have a lot less rat-type visitors because the stripy-head sparrows do a pretty good job of eating all the nuts that fall to the ground. And the juncos are back too. I would far rather birds than feeding the rats. So as we bring that color up, you can see how that's going to look. And I'll be comparing that to my picture as I go to make sure. See, her face, though, is very much full of light. Whereas this model has a lot more creases and stuff. So although I'm still going to be following that same kind of V-shaped light in general, her mouth is also bigger. So it's not going to be quite the same. It's going to be the same colors, but it might not look exactly the same because the expression is different. Yep. And that's fine. You just need to work up. It's more work to work it up then, Laura. Because you have to go over the same surface so many times. So I used to paint everything dark to light, and then I started doing it just very selectively because I realized that it was wasting my time a lot. And there were colors I didn't need to be doing that with. So I don't do it with dark or mid colors at all, but I do it with light colors. Because the light colors are the ones where I tend to lose my shadows the most, or be at risk of doing so. Or be challenged to push my shadows dark enough on a light skin tone. So yeah, okay, things are coming together. She still looks evil. We're just going to have evil Sophie. I've just decided I'm just going to capitulate. Oh yeah, look pretty good. Good, Richard. Alrighty, so that was a very easy skin tone to remember, so I'm not even going to write it down. Wild Violet it is. All right, thanks everybody. Tomorrow we are back to Jolie. I think we need to do... We got most of the gold done, but we didn't get the glasses done, and we need to do the book, and we need to do her eyes, which are tiny. And I need to get the red out and do those. So we'll be working. We still have, we've got to do the silver keys too. So we have a fair amount of stuff to do tomorrow, and we'll decide what we're going to actually do when we get there. But we'll be back to normal-sized figures, thank God, tomorrow. Twitch won't give you your Prime sub. Yeah, I just keep thinking that purple is definitely a Disney villain skin color, so... I think it's actually, for dragons, working dark to light can be a real pain. Yes. Thanks, Sturgeon. Alright, folks. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do Jolie tomorrow. And hopefully y'all have a good Tuesday. I got to get going because Kiki is starting to act up out there. I hear her stirring, anticipating barkiness. Yeah, thanks, Quindy, for shepherding the stream as always. I guess that's Kiki that's shepherding the stream. But yeah, thank you, everybody. Have a good one. Good luck with the off-gassing crap, Twisted Oma. All right, bye-bye.